Hello, good evening. I believe we are connected. We are live. Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are all going very well. My name is Neil Price. This is Jessica Price.
Hi.
And we are together, but I am.
What?
Trials and Enduro Skills.
I was gonna say we're not together. When did that happen? Holy crap.
Either way, this is Trials and Enduro Skills. This is welcome to video 5 in the obstacle riding series. Tonight we are talking Rev Squat Go, RSG, a very, very important pattern. This is a more important video than I can even insist to you. It's very, very important. It is the foundation. It gets you going. So this tonight really matters. First of all, a big thank you to my sponsors, Buru Rehab, Alita Construction, and Moto Dynamics, of course, and Lottie and Ord.
I was just about to say, does your wife get a mention? Proud sponsor for 17 years.
For 17 years. So I want to get into RSG, and before we do, I want to cover some miscommunication or misunderstandings around what RSG is. Now, RSG, Rev Squat Go, is the underlying pattern that exists in all of the obstacle riding techniques. So all three of the techniques have this underlying pattern, as I've explained in previous videos. It is not a technique. RSG is not how you ride an obstacle. It is the pattern that you need. It's the order in which things happen. So you need to rev first, you need to squat down, and then we go, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now that order never changes, and you can't begin to ride obstacles unless you can deliberately and consciously ride and deliver in that order. If you can't deliver the pattern and play it out on the bike, you can't then go and ride obstacles. You're not ready for it. And it is amazing how many riders struggle to put this into play deliberately, even very experienced riders. Now tonight, this week, if you guys go out and practice this during the week, because we're going to go through and analyze it first, then I'm going to show you how to actually learn this and how to put it into place. So the process which we use in a coaching session, so you can go and play with this and put it into action yourself. But it is unbelievable how many people who have many years of experience can't break habits that are already existing. Especially if you are a dominant throttle rider. If you ride on the throttle all the time, you can really struggle with this. And then also people's body movements, they can really struggle with it as well. But once you get the pattern in place, then the rest of it all becomes much, much easier. So as I said, the RSG is a pattern, and we're only trying to learn the order within which things happen. So just that simple pattern. It becomes your fallback. At any point in time, if you're confused or unsure, within context, you can just say to yourself, rev, squat, go. And that is always kind of like your minimum requirement to ride the obstacle, and it really does help big time. When you build on this, it becomes an automated process, and you'll begin to notice that this pattern exists in so many other aspects of your riding. When we're bridging gaps or jumping gaps, or if you're at the base of a very steep hill out of a creek bed, or if you're riding through creek beds, if you're bunny hopping, there's so many other aspects. Exits of corners in some ways can be done. Standing riding where you're moving very fast on single trail, you start to use this in different places. And you start to, as you go further in, you'll recognize the pattern more and more. Now, it's very important as well to understand that the techniques, ride, punch, and splat, they are all founded in how lift is generated and the three lift mechanisms. They themselves are how we take the pattern of RSG and we manipulate it and we alter it based on those different lift mechanisms. So it's just very important to keep in your mind that RSG is simply the pattern. I can't stress that enough, because I get lots of people asking questions which consider it as a technique. So there was one or two questions that had been asked before the show, and I cannot find them for the life of me at the moment. So if you were the person who was asking those questions, jump in and we'll answer them tonight. So first of all, an analysis. I'm going to put up a slow-mo video and show you the video here. So we'll jump over to camera 2. And first of all, I'll do this one here without the audio attached to it. These are both slow-mos. So with Rev Squat Go, we have here the set out. I'll talk about the setup itself. Whoops, sorry, wrong camera. I'll talk about the setup in a minute, so we're not going to look at that at the moment, but we've got 3 cones set up here, and they are the points where we are going to rev, squat, and go. Now, that is the pink set here, this pink set, and then we have a yellow set, and then we have the orange set at the end. So here we're going to rev, here I'm going to squat, and at the end is the go moment. So the rev is obvious. It's opening the throttle and having RPM available. So if you remember, the throttle we consider just availability. The clutch is all delivery. So at that first cone, we're cracking the throttle, raising the RPM, but we're trying not to add any speed at all. We want the speed to be constant. So then the bike is traveling at very low speed, but the RPM is disproportionate. It's higher than the actual travel speed. So when we let the clutch out, there is something to actually happen. There's some available energy to deliver to the back wheel. Really, seems really simple, but it's amazing how often in the moment we can see past this. When we get to the middle set of cones, we are just squatting down. And we're not having to squat crazy deep. We are just getting down, so we're ready to stand up. So the squat is simply about getting yourself into the start position, ready for the go. The last set of cones is the go moment. And the go moment has 2 parts to it that work together. And that is, we initiate the stand, and then we release the clutch. So we start to stand, we begin to stand, which pushes down on the geometry of the bike. It gives you the traction, it initiates the leverage, it sets the geometry, and then a moment later we release the clutch. And they work in unison. So then we continue to lever through the release of the clutch and go from that moment. So enough talking, Neil, let's play this through. So this is what it all looks like together. And as I said, this is a little bit slow. So at the first set of cones, I'm revving. I'll show you the audio one in a moment. Second, look at my balance. That's so good going that slow. Second set of cones, I squat down and I get ready. I'm just getting down to the start position. And at the last set of cones, I begin to stand, then release the clutch. And we stand up nice and tall. Now, I will jump to this one. Now this one shows you the audio. You can see here in the far left, hopefully it's up on your screen at home.
It is now.
The lower, that's delayed, that screen. This lower end here is on the entry point. So when I begin, the RPM here is low. Then as I get to this first set of cones, I raise the RPM. But if you notice here, at this moment in time, as I travel in, my travel speed doesn't change. So as the RPM increases, the speed doesn't. And I'm controlling the speed on the clutch. Now, when I control the speed on the clutch, it's going to be controlled from this set of cones all the way to the last set. So when I crack the throttle, raise the RPM, get the flywheel spinning, I'm slipping the clutch. Now you're going to get some variance when you put this into play, but you're trying to keep things relatively smooth the whole way through. It is much easier to manage the throttle and the actual RPM on a trials bike. Because we don't have the aggressive power pipes, the RPM doesn't ramp up as rapidly as what the Enduro bikes do. On the Enduro bikes, you generally will find people will peak and trough their RPM through the whole action. Here, because I'm on the X-Trainer has the less of a power pipe, for want of a word. It's not so aggressive, so the RPM doesn't jump up so rapidly, and it's much easier to then control things on the clutch whilst we go through. But that clutch is controlling the speed for the entire length of the exercise until we release the clutch. So all the way to the end there. Now, you'll notice that as I said, no speed is picked up at all. I'm also, when I do the exercise, I am starting the RPM at the cones. I'm not starting it back here. I'm not starting it, you know, half a meter past. I like to work on the axle. When the axle passes the cones, that's the point that I like to actually initiate the action. And that starts training you to judge things based off what's on the ground, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it's kind of important that we do that because it starts building that judgment for you into the future. Then as we roll into the center, when I get here, I don't drop rapidly, I slowly lower down. Now, for some of you, it may happen over the whole length from the center to the last set of cones. But when I get here, I'm just initiating and slowly lowering down. And you'll notice that the bike doesn't drop. At no point, if you watch the seat, if I zoom in a touch for you, if you watch the seat and you watch the attitude of the bike, it doesn't move because I'm lowering very slow. And if you remember rightly from the previous video, that slow lowering means we have constant, consistent traction right before the moment where we're going to release the clutch. Sorry, Jess, there was a question?
Yes, Mark Adventuro has jumped on and he said, hi, thanks for your marvelous explanation. First of all, the question is, how do we train/evaluate the amount of RPM required for a move/obstacle during training?
Cool. The reality is the RPM that you use is not so important. It actually doesn't matter if the bike is revving its head off. When I'm demonstrating at a coaching session, generally I used to hurt my poor old WR250 and I used to hold the bike on the throttle stop and then control everything on the clutch. So the RPM doesn't matter, it's the delivery via the clutch that matters. Now, how much do you use? You're going to build that feel. I can't tell you, I can't give you a value or a figure. You're going to build the feel through this exercise. And you'll build the feel more quickly than you realize. You then need to then learn as we go through the different exercises through punch and ride and everything else, you'll learn how much and how little you need. For example, in punch technique, because it's so efficient, as I've said before, you actually need very little. And you'll see all the expert riders will have very little RPM when they're punching. Ride technique, because of the nature of it, it generally needs more RPM and more clutch because the delivery of the energy is what's creating the lift. So all that will vary in time, but you'll adapt to them as you go. And I can't give you a specific figure on it. So hopefully that answers it. What I'll do is I'll run through the rest of this analysis and then answer questions, if that's cool. And please do keep asking questions, guys, because Jess they'll accumulate there and then we'll answer them all. So the attitude of the bike is very stable, so there's nice, consistent traction the whole way. When I get to the moment where I'm going to go, where I'm ready to go, I'm a little bit early here. The axle should be at that point if I'm going to be picky. This guy's not very good. He needs a bit more practice. But when you're demonstrating, you always make the mistakes. When I initiate the stand, I will begin to stand and then a moment later I release the clutch. So you'll see here, the attitude of the bike hasn't changed apart from the fact I'm beginning to stand. It's not much, and I get to about there before I release the clutch. So maybe a touch further. There, I reckon, is the moment of clutch release. And I can tell the moment of clutch release because the back of the bike, I'll zoom in a bit further, the chain tension will pull the back of the bike down. So as you release the clutch, the chain is pulling this way, the tire is resisting it, and it pulls the back wheel up to the bike, and the back of the bike will begin to squat. So you'll see just here as we go into it, the bike just begins to squat and it drops down. Now my leverage is assisting that, but what it highlights is that from here to here, I've initiated the stand and then the clutch is being released after that. So that's the really important point, is that the standing action begins first, then we release the clutch. Now, when I'm coaching people, I will always say go. I just say go to begin with. And I find from experience about 80% of riders will naturally already do this and they won't have a problem. About 20% of riders, I've actually got to consciously instruct them to begin to stand first, then release the clutch. But about 80% will already have stand first and then release the clutch. It might be a bit messy at the beginning, but within about 10 attempts or so, we'll begin to see that it's already there. We'll need to correct and finesse it, but we won't need to instruct them to do that specifically. But then another 20% or so will need to be told specifically to do it consciously. So that is the point there. Now, when we stand, let me zoom out, wrong button, too many buttons here in front of me. When we stand and initiate that clutch release, the bike will then come up to meet me, and we'll start in that, if you remember rightly from the leverage session, a low V essentially. So I know the V is like this, but it's quite a broad low V. Actually, that's not quite right. I'll go, it's more like this, my center of mass, and then the bike's kind of out here sort of thing. Something like that. It's pretty poorly drawn, but as we begin to stand, we come up and then we make a tall V as I go. Now, don't stress too much about how the exact extension of the body and everything else happens. There's time to diagnose that. At the beginning, you just want the pattern. Rev, squat, go, stand, and then release the clutch. As long as it happens in that order, you are absolutely on the money and it's totally fine. But before we actually go out and I show you how to put this into play, I want to talk about a little bit more of the detail and the lift that's being generated here. Because this is essentially ride technique. We are generating lift by geometry on the bike. So if we come back in this video, it's a bit slow to use the buttons on a slow-mo. So at this moment, when I initiate the release of the clutch, the first thing that happens, I'll zoom in more for you so you can see that. Something like this. First thing that happens is the back of the bike is going to squat. Now the line of force from the back tire is going to be from here, it's going to push down through the instantaneous force center, and here it's going to be below the center of mass. The center of mass of me and the bike, because I'm such a flea weight, is going to be like, let's just say there, for want of a word. So it's going to cause some rotation in the bike. If you watch closely, you'll see that the bike itself, the fixed mass or the sprung mass of the bike, as I just click, oh, not yet, it's going to, just here, you can just see it rotate, like that, as the back of the bike squats. And that kind of scoops the bike into the air. And then a moment later, and this is a really important point, you'll see that the gap here between the mudguard and the rear tyre is going to get larger because the swing arm will begin to extend. And what that means is at first, the lift is going to scoop the bike. So at first here, it's going to be scooping and pushing under the center of mass. And then as the bike rises and the swing arm extends, it's going to push more into the center of mass. So what happens is the bike squats, it begins the scoop, but then as the swing arm extends, it pushes the bike. And it's really, really important you understand this because this combines with the fact that we're accelerating on the clutch. And as you remember, the clutch delivers a big hit of energy and then it tapers off. So as the front wheel begins to rise, the power or the energy delivered to the back wheel is tapering off, which really reduces the chances of you, eliminates the chance of you flipping the bike properly. If you combine that with the fact that the geometry scoops and then pushes you, it stops the looping out. It eliminates the flipping the bike. If we fully compress the bike, then there's much more chance of you looping out, which I'll explain in another video. But if you fully compress the bike, or if you have really, really rock hard suspension and it doesn't allow the rotation of the bike, there is much, much more chance of you flipping the bike. If you allow the bike to do this, so if your suspension is soft enough, it will sit back, a lot of the energy will be lost to the damper, the bike will scoop, lift it up, and then the swing arm will extend and it will push the mass. So once the front wheel starts to rise, it'll be pushed in the direction you want to go. It'll reduce the rotation that's occurring. A really important part, because there is always a fear aspect in this. So once the bike is in the air, the other aspect of this is, I'll zoom back out here, go a touch in and move this way. If you come back to this point where I'm starting, you'll see that the line of the fork is here and my wrist is there. As I go through the action and I stand and I bring the bike to me, you'll notice that the line of the fork is like that, and then my wrist is like this. And it's a big difference from here to here. Essentially, the first one is throttle on, and this is my line of my fork. As I begin to stand, that occurs, which is naturally rolling the throttle off, which I explained in another video. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you go about this technique correctly, your chances of flipping the bike are very, very low, because you're using the clutch, you're using the geometry of the bike, so the force is pushing the bike the way you want, and then you have that throttle is shutting off. The throttle you don't need to shut the throttle off because you're naturally going to do it. So you don't need to add the complexity of thinking about it. And a lot of people do add that in. We want to keep this as clean and simple for your brain to perceive as possible. The cleaner and simpler we make it, the better for everyone and the better for you. It makes it much easier to learn. So, so that's the analysis of it. Do you guys have any questions around the analysis? Is there anything there, Jess?
No, but Mark did say thanks for the answer, but could you be more specific about the body position during the squat?
Cool bananas.
And can I ask a question too?
Yeah, you sure can when I hit the right button. What's your question, Jess?
Well, when you talk about the squat,
yeah,
I've just had a moment. Are you talking about the squat of the bike, or is it the squat of the person?
As in Rev Squat Go?
Yeah.
That's the squat of the person.
Okay.
The
yeah.
person is
I
squatting
thought
down.
that was, but then when you mentioned that,
The squat of the bike doesn't occur until we're in the go moment.
Okay.
The person is squatting from this, the rider is squatting at this moment.
So it's the rider squat.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep. No, I'm all over it. Now you can.
Hopefully that is clear enough. So Mark, it's a really good question. Now, we want to set the leverage on the bike. And if you remember in the last video about leverage, so cast your memory back to the leverage aspect. When we are going to pull on the bars, we need to have our body mass back, because if we pull the bike to us, we're going to go to the bike. And it's actually a really important question you asked. I was going to cover it in the next bit, but we'll cover it now. So you need to be back a little from the bars. You can't be over the handlebars. That is one of the big regressions riders make, is they will squat down and they'll lean over the handlebars. If you see here, I'm squatted in a kind of a good little schoolboy position with a nice straight back. And because when I then pull on the handlebars, my body's inertia is going to resist coming forward, but it's going to move forward whether I like it or not. Now, in the action, because the bike is so heavy compared to me, I'm only 70 kilos, the Enduro bike's 9,700 kilos or something, I'm going to move to the bike more. If I was a 130 kilo rider, the bike is going to move to me more. So a heavier rider doesn't need to start as far back. They can kind of be anywhere and they're going to pull the bike more to them. They'll have enough room. You don't need to maximize these things. You just need enough to achieve the leverage that you need in the moment. So if you're a lighter weight rider, it doesn't mean you have to be crazy back. You are limited by your arms. Your arms are only so long. If you're a taller rider, you don't need to go back and try to exaggerate and over-exaggerate it. But we want to put all this force down into the foot pegs with our legs as strongly as we can, and we want to pull the bars up. We're not throwing our body weight back. It's really important that you're not throwing the body back. Taller riders, they can get away with that, and they will do it, and you can achieve it. It's a way of, and totally fine to do in the future. You'll get lazy on the bike, and by lazy, I don't mean that in a negative sense. Lazy is also efficient, as I used to tell my boss. But when you're taller, you can, and heavier, you can throw your body weight back a touch, and it can be quite effective. The only problem is it tends to cause more rotation. And I know that riders tend to carry that habit for a long time, and it causes other problems if that becomes your default setting. So it's better to default on a more vertical standing action, and then in the future you can relax and blur the lines between all this. When we stand, the standing action is quite vertical, or as vertical as can be. So you'll see here I'm standing and it's relatively vertical, and then I get pulled forward to the bike and I'm resisting coming forward. Now, most of the action is through the legs initially. So it's kind of like any of the Olympic lifting movements. The legs initiate first and then we finish off with the arms. So the legs are the biggest muscles in your body, so you may as well use them. But you can see here that my arms are very tensioned. My little chicken arms are really strong here, and then the legs are doing the work. And it's really important that your hip is extending. So this joint is extending and the knees are extending at the same time. It's best, like I've said before, to be standing on the arches of your feet near your heel, not on the balls of your toe. And that's going to give you the maximum power into the action. If I was a lighter weight rider, I would be aiming more this way. If you're a heavier rider, you'd be aiming a little more vertical in comparison. But really, the rider here, the lighter weight rider, that's lighter in proportion to your bike. So hopefully, Mark, that has answered your questions. Tim the Toolman, where do monkeys eat their breakfast? At your trailer normally when you bring breakfast to trials for us?
I haven't done that for a while, so I'm a bit hungry.
A bit hungry. Was there any other questions regarding the analysis?
No, just monkey business.
Just Tim being Tim. Awesome, no worries. I will jump on my bike now and I will talk about the setup and then how to implement this. So bear with me a moment. I'll grab my helmet, and if we can jump to camera 1, Jessica.
I just pressed the 1.
Yep, the number 1.
You're there. You're on screen.
I'm here. Is that all right?
You're a bit bright.
I'm a little bit bright, hey? Let me just run this one down. How's that?
A little bit better. Still
bit better?
bright off to the other side.
Oh.
You were just illuminated tonight.
Illuminated? I'll just drop these down. Sorry, guys. Bear with me 1 second.
It's the joys of live shows.
Yeah.
Like literally live.
I'll just turn that one around for a second.
Oh, much better.
Much better? Much better?
Yes.
So the first thing that we are doing here is we want to set the cones up. And it's the important thing here is that you have a slight uphill. The slight uphill makes life so much easier for you, it's not funny. If it is too level, if the ground is level, or if it's downhill, what you'll have is the bike will tend to roll. There's always a little bit of drag in your clutch. There's always some level of drag. And that drag is going to propel you along on flat ground. And if it's downhill, you're going to feel the roll. You want the ground to be quite smooth, not lumps and bumps going through for you. So you'll see the spot I have here that I've picked. It's uphill, it's only slight, it only might be 100 mil max extra at this end to that end. It's not massive, but it's constant, and the ground here is pretty smooth. So it's, when I'm controlling the speed on the clutch, I'm not going to come up against the resistance of lumps and bumps, so it makes it nice and clean and smooth. When I set the cones up, what I'm doing is I set them up, and I don't like to go any more than a bike length. These are probably a bit longer than what I would do in a coaching session. 2 meters is the absolute max. Now, the reason for that is your anticipation will carry you on. So if you come in here and you're squatted down and you're trying to wait for the last set of cones, you will anticipate the cones and you'll really want to get there, and you'll tend to rush your action. The biggest problem we always have with obstacle riding is people will rush, they get the anticipation or the anxiety, and they will try to make it happen too quickly. So we set it out at about 2 meters and not more than that. Once we start to get the technique in place, then we bring them in and we'll actually shorten them right up. Now, the shortening process happens really quickly, like quicker than you realize. Once you've got the pattern in place, you actually start progressing quite quickly. Initiating the pattern is what really takes the time. So that is the rev, the squat, and then the go. So that's the important part. So when we come in here, we're cracking the throttle, raising the RPM, no extra speed. Then we're squatting down, holding that to the end. And then at the go moment, we're going to stand and then release the clutch. When we put this into play, it is really important that you literally break it down into the smallest possible sections that you can. Really important. Don't jump ahead too quickly on yourself. If you get it in place really easy, do it more times than you expect at the beginning for this first initiation. Once you've got it in place, you can then rapidly progress from that. The throttle riders struggle the most. So I'll just grab the bike now. Give it a bit of a warm up, because it is a bit cold out here. Now, you can begin, the stages that I like to deliver it in is the first level is just controlling the speed and the clutch, because separating clutch and throttle is the biggest regression that I deal with. I'm dealing with it all the time. You'll hear riders come in and instead of, when they come in, they'll raise the RPM and you'll hear stuff like, they will shut the throttle off, or sorry, let me speak properly. They'll be coming in, they'll rev the bike, they'll shut the throttle off and then go on the throttle. And it seems to work quite well, but it's not truly on the clutch, so you can easily convince yourself of it. So it's very important that we focus on separating the throttle and the clutch first and get that into place. Now you can do this, you can initiate it just by sitting, you can do it standing. It's better if you are standing and you're comfortable with it, but if you're really fearful of it, you can begin with sitting. And there's no problems with you being fearful. You'd be amazed how many people are. So when we come in, the first level is just controlling that speed. So when we come in, nice and slow, raise the RPM, doesn't need to be crazy high, and we'll just roll out the end. So we're not even worried about releasing the clutch at the end. Traveling nice and slow, raise the RPM. At the end, just let the bike ride off. When you get to the end of the cones, it's very important that you don't add throttle. Just there, we're going to shut everything off. You can roll the throttle off, you can release the clutch. However it happens, it doesn't matter, as long as you're not adding throttle at the end. Adding throttle is going to go back to that throttle regression, so it's a really important point. Once you are comfortable with raising the RPM a touch, I like to get those who are a bit nervous to go too high. So I get them to and that just really helps them overcome the RPM anxiety. We take it higher than what you're going to use when you go to do the exercise. It just brings the heart rate down and calms things. When your heart rate was up here with the RPM up there, and then when you're doing the exercise, we'll drop that RPM down and it'll make life a lot easier for you. It can be very difficult to get some of the enduro bikes with the power pipes to keep steady, consistent RPM. If you are struggling with it, as long as it's within a decent range, you don't want it to be going crazy low and crazy high. As consistent as you can make it. And the more consistent you can, the better. But if your bike is a very peaky bike, it can be quite difficult to do. Once we have the separation of the clutch and the throttle and you're judging the speed, it's really important that you're not building speed. You want to keep it consistent all the way through. So the speed of the approach is the same as your travel through the exercise. So if you watch my speed, it'll be relatively the same. So I'll come through like this, RPM up, and I don't build speed. You also don't want to slow down too much on the process. You want to keep that nice and consistent and controlled on the clutch. The next level. So we've got the RPM in place. When we get that in place, the next thing we're going to work on is the clutch release. And the reason for that is that people are generally very fearful of that clutch release. And they will tend to freak out, and then it causes other aggressions. Your brain will step in and it'll sabotage you in different ways to reduce that clutch release and reduce the lift that you're going to get. And we want to nip that fear in the bud now. So what we do is once you've got the RPM on, at the end, the last set of cones, instead of just fading off, we're going to start releasing the clutch with the revs on at the orange cone. So we come in nice and slow, raise the RPM, and then at the last set, we're going to let the clutch out. Now you can begin nice and low with a very long, slow clutch release. So sometimes it'll be like RPM on, and then slow release of the clutch, depending on your fear level and your anxiety levels. And then you can build up, there's no body movement here at all. Then you can just gradually get faster and faster until you're completely snapping the clutch. I often like to get riders to really listen in to the RPM. So when we release the clutch, you should hear the revs from being high and audible to ooh. You always want to hear whoa, because we want to use that energy. Once that flywheel slows down, because you're not hearing RPM like you would be on the pipe with the throttle wide open. The throttle is only partially cracked like we talked about in a previous video. There's not a lot of fuel and air going in there. You're not actually producing a lot of power. You just have a fast spinning motor. All the RPM that you hear, all that noise is just a spinning flywheel. There's not a lot of force behind it. There's not a lot of power. There's just momentum. So when we release it, that momentum is used. The energy is dissipated. So if you listen to it here, it drops right off. So we've got the revving in place, and then we've got the clutch release in place. And it's really, really important with that clutch release, when you're here, we absolutely do not want to add throttle. And you probably won't see it, I'm gonna run out of shot, But I'm just going to, if you just listen to this, this is what it sounds like. There's nothing like riding your mates' bikes and ripping up their tyres. Did you hear that extra throttle at the end? We'll get people, we're looking at we're trying to set the pattern, and evidence of the pattern being relatively correct, and it's not the aim of the pattern, of the process, but evidence of it is good, efficient front wheel lift. We don't want to carry it off into the sunset. We're not worried about that because that's going to settle you back into a wheelie. Now, you can go and play with that another time, that's great. But for this, we're going to just lift and then let everything drop. We're not going to add with the throttle. If you consciously start adding the throttle, you will regress back to riding the obstacle with the throttle, and that's such a problem, it's not funny. The other thing is don't consciously worry about shutting the throttle, because when you do, it also regresses you back. I've seen so many riders, they just get so focused on trying to cut the throttle that they then think that shutting off and on become how we control it. We want to think of the clutch as the throttle as simply availability, not delivery. The clutch is the delivery. I think that's all my major points there on the clutch release side. Really take your time to build that up. So each of these steps, setting the speed, the throttle, and the clutch control in place, so level 1, that literally you can do it for hundreds of attempts. Releasing the clutch, you can literally do it for hundreds of attempts. Some of you will obviously pick it up really quickly. You might do it in 3 or 4 and you go, oh yeah, cool, I've got that. You can move on to the next level. That's totally fine. The third level is to add the squat in. And when we add the squat in, when we add the body movement, this throws the brain an absolute curveball. It really confuses things. So what I like to do is I like to get people focused on just worrying about the squat and then a clutch release. We're not actually going to worry about the go yet. We're going to rev at the yellow cones, we're going to squat. We're just going to lower to the start position, and then we're going to release the clutch at the end. So that's level 3. I think I'm up to 3 levels. I don't have my notes in front of me. So when we come in, raise the RPM, no extra speed, squat to the start position, let the clutch out. There's no standing, we're just squatting down to the start position. Now, for those of you who are fearful of the acceleration aspect, it's really good because you're low and your center of mass is low, so the acceleration will push you forward. You're not going to generate a lot of lift, but it'll push you forward, and it's not going to feel like it's going to lift, so you can get really comfortable with that acceleration because you're nice and low in the moment. But you don't want to latch onto that as your safety mechanism. That's the backside of that. Once we have that squat in, when you come in, you want to make sure that you squat down and you wait until the last set of cones for that clutch release. The second that we get your body movement in place, the anticipation begins to play havoc for most people. If that'll stand, the stand's a bit, the sag's a bit low for that rear shock. When you come in, people squat down and then the quads will start burning. If you have weak quads, the ride from here to there feels like forever. So you're down here, your legs are burning, the RPM's high, you're anticipating this point. You want to wait until you get there. We always want to wait for it. Don't let it happen earlier because things will then start blending together. And like I said, we're going to start long and then later on we can shorten the length. So make sure at this moment when you're squatting that you stick to the marks on the ground to your point where you're going to do it. The next level after that is we're going to initiate the stand. And you've already got the clutch in place, you've got the RPM, you've got the squat. you're completely set up now for the standing action. And when you stand, we don't want to thrust into it. What I mean by that is we don't want to start doing this and throwing our body and everything else. We want to treat this like a lifting movement. Whoop. I really should have picked a bike with a longer shock setup. We want to treat this literally like an Olympic lifting movement where it's functional and it's clean and it's smooth, and you're not going like that into it. You're not throwing your body into it. You're going to stand, take the tension, and then stand through that. So it's nice and functional. We're not going to snap into any movement. And like I said in previous videos with the standing action, we're not going to preload. We're not going to go down on the bike. So once you've squatted and you're in the start position, make sure that you don't drop and then go up. We want to be here and just stand up through the action from that. So when we come in, RPM comes on, we're going to wait and then squat and wait to the end and then stand. Now, with the standing action, this bike, because I've just grabbed a random bike out of the shed, Luke Rogers, thanks for your sponsorship for tonight. The handlebars on this bike are rolled back because Luke's a bit shorter than me. I'm very tall, so the distance from the foot peg to the handlebar is really short, so I feel like there's not a lot of leverage in this. If I was riding this bike, I'd roll the bars forward more, and it'd be handy to put pegs that are further back for this action. If you do have that on the bike, it's great. If you are on an adventure bike, if you're on a motocross bike at all, the shorter space, the pegs are always closer to the bars, and this feels really horrible. On the trials bikes, it feels very comfortable because it's such a long distance from the foot peg to the handlebars. The leverage will feel very comfortable, and the bike is very light. But that position will change things. Here, I'm a bit cramped and kind of buckled over. But that standing action wants to be nice and strong. I'm not throwing my body weight back, and I'm absolutely not dropping over the bars. So we don't want to do this with the stand. Squat. And we don't want to get down here and go like that. Hopefully I'm explaining this all right. I'll try to slow this standing action down as much as I can, but rev, squat, stand. Now the standing action is going to reveal your functional body movement weaknesses. You will see people when they go to stand and they will be on the bike and they'll be squatted nicely like this, and they'll go, one muscle moves and that's it. Or they'll go, or they'll do this, they'll go. If your glutes are weak, you'll see people pull and they just pull themselves into the bike. The legs will stay there. So it looks kind of like this. This is what you can refer back to when you want to self-diagnose. You'll come in, they're revving, they'll squat and they go. Another one, if you've got strong legs, weak arms, I'm getting confused now, but another one is people will squat and they'll go, and they'll push their butt back. All of those movements will be a weaker action within your body. and it's going to reduce the leverage. And I know a lot of people online will tell you to throw your body weight back. Generally, throwing the body weight back only really helps when you don't have space on the bike to be able to stand up and use the leverage. So if you're in a sitting position doing hard enduro in some sort, throwing your body weight back can really help in the future when you're on like a big adventure bike. If you're on a bike that's substantially heavier than you, eventually if the relationship between the bike and you gets so big that the bike's so heavy in comparison, the only thing you have left is to throw your body weight back. The leverage won't do a lot because you'll be pulled to the bike so much. But for the vast majority of people on an enduro or a trials bike, even an adventure bike, I will post up a video of me on a BMW GS 1200 riding over a log. Even on that, the standing action was quite vertical because the energy from the bike, the delivery of that flywheel's inertia to the back wheel is what is generating the lift. So it tends to push the bike up and match you. The bike has to be massively heavier than you. One other important point with the standing is that you don't want to be holding the bike. If you're a motocross enduro rider who rides heavily in the attack position, we're going to be stood back for one with relatively straight arms, but you don't want to hold the bike. If you're holding the bike, what it ends up doing, if I can balance, is you pivot around the knees and your knee can't move backwards. So you don't stand up vertically. Like if I stand up vertical, my knee will go back like that. It won't be huge on the bike with all the movement, but if I lock out, I'll just pull myself forward, I'll hinge over my knee, and all of my body mass goes forward and over the knee. So it ends up looking like this. Probably a poor demonstration, but that will give you a much weaker leverage action on the bike. And it's all right if you're in good traction situations, but the second you get on a slippery rock or what do you call it, clay, wet clay or something like that, you'll really struggle to deliver all the force directly into the rear tire. That will work in an attack position for acceleration and traction. Once you've delivered some power, you've got to initiate that connection to the back tire first, which is another topic altogether. So make sure your knees are off the bike and you allow them to move freely on the bike. So the last thing is that when you're standing on the bike, you want to maintain that tension through the pegs and through your arms, that leverage all the way up. You want to then build to being able to lift the front wheel up to you cleanly so the handlebars come to you. Now you don't have to get there overnight, but in time, it's really important that you can pick it up and put it down on the spot. So when you are practicing your go moment, I'm not going to do this in relation to the cones, I'm just going to lift up on the spot. Your aim is then, once you've got all of this stuff in order and it's happening and you're getting regular lift, your aim is to go and get nice and high so the bike goes up nicely and then back down, and not that in a big long distance, because when we're riding obstacles, we don't want to carry speed into them. We want really efficient, effective lift. When you do this correctly, there's probably some people online at the moment in the comments who've done coaching with me before, and they'll have experienced how effective this is. If you are in there, comment, but it really, you see people's eyes just go, whoa, man, that was so easy. The bike just lifted incredibly easy. When it does as well, you will feel that the bike goes up and it just kind of sits there. It's very resistant to looping out. If you're going uphill, it's very unlikely you're going to loop out. The only time people fall off the back of the bike, I wouldn't say loop out. Looping out to me is when it goes like this and there's that rotation. They tend to just go to the back wheel, and then because they're so tall and the ground's not steep enough, if it was a steep hill, the back wheel would roll out. But because they get so tall on flat ground, they kind of get stuck there, and the bike can only go left, right, down, or backwards. So they're kind of completely on the balance point. And when they do that, it's great because they've got effective lift. Sometimes it costs them a mudguard or whatever, but it's not an aggressive looping out, you know, it's nothing like that. Once you have it in place, once you've got RSG intact, you can then, first of all, you can bring the cones in, and then what I like to do, once you shorten them up, then I like to go to, depending on the riders, just like 2 sets quite close together. Something like this, ignore those 2 there. And it's like, so we condense the whole action down into a very short space in time. Then we'll just go to a single point. When we go to a single point, what I then like to do is start introducing the brakes. And when we introduce the brakes, we can use the front, then the rear only, so use them both individually only, and then you can use them both together. Now, when we use the front brake only, you end up with quite a dive. You get quite an action of the bike rocking and then setting back, because the line of the forks is that way, the bike will tend to dive. And it really allows you to kind of feel the movement. I like to use each brake independently at first, so it's, whoop, I just shut the throttle off. Bad demonstration, Neil. But when you come in, RPM, the dive, ignore my technique for the moment, I was trying to exaggerate the dive in the forks for you, but the dive in the fork becomes really obvious and you can feel that occur, and then you feel it rock back. That rocking sensation is what we use when we're getting people to do sit-down wheelies, because in a sit-down wheelie, you don't have the leverage, and we want to set the geometry to create the lift, don't we? This is a little bonus extra. This is how you do your sit-down wheelies. With a sit-down wheelie, you don't throw your body weight back, you rock from the front to the back to set the geometry, and that creates that nice lift in exactly the same way. So we go, and if you wait for the bike to rock back, if you wait for the bike to start moving back, the rock onto the back of the bike plus the chain tension pulls the back of the bike, sets the geometry, creates nice lift and stops you looping out. So it'll set up really nice lift for you to do sit-down wheelies. But when we're going back to RSG, when you do it, first of all, do it with your front brake only. Then you do it with your rear brake only. And that can be quite confusing for people because a lot of people don't really have good control of their ankles. But you can come in covering the rear brake, use the rear brake to stop at the cones, and then go from that. You've got to release the brakes obviously at the same time. But then, and this is the important part, do both, front brake and the rear brake together. Now, you'll notice that when you do the others, there'll be quite a lot of movement in the suspension. When you do it on rear brake and front, because your forks travel at this angle, and your swing arm travels like this, because really the pivot is the rear axle, and the swing arm pivot is going down in an arc, it kind of pulls the bike apart because it goes like that, and it stretches the sprung mass or the fixed mass of the bike. It kind of stretches it out. So when you use both brakes, it deadens the bike. It won't compress as far when we're doing that squat. So you've got a really solid base to stand from and lever off. So you get really good leverage out of it. The moment you release the clutch, all of the geometry will take over and do its thing, but it gives you this really solid base to work off. I don't know if it'll show up in this, and I unfortunately don't have slow-mos of it, but if you do it with the front brake only, the fork should have dived a fair bit. Ignore my body movement here. Don't use that as an example. but both brakes, it doesn't dive as far in. So, oh, I'm getting dizzy riding in circles. So that is the process that I use to run people through RSG as a pattern. It's important that you don't worry about really anything other than the fact that the order is occurring correctly. Now, when we get into ride technique, when we start using ride technique, then we can worry about the action of the standing, getting really specific. Here, as long as it's within the margins that I've given you tonight, you're going to be on the money. When we start really applying it to ride technique, that's a different matter. That's when we get more specific again. So we'll take it from this. This is very low resolution, then we'll go higher resolution into that. One little thought that I didn't write down here on my notepad, for the more experienced riders, those of you who may struggle with this, because honest to God, it's the more experienced riders that have more trouble with this, because you've got ingrained habits that are much harder to break. And for those riders, it can sometimes help doing RSG into a bit of a wall or a bit of a dirt embankment, somewhere to put the energy into. I know it sounds really odd, but I've had really positive outcomes with riders who are struggling with it, with heavy throttle regression or whatever. If we just put a mound of dirt or a hill, if we put the cones, the last set of cones, like 200 mil from a small embankment of dirt, for whatever reason, I haven't worked out why yet, it settles their mind, it calms them down, there's something to put the energy into, and that can really help some of those riders. So I'll now jump back to the other computer, to the other camera. Can you flick back, Jess?
4.
4. Woo. Awesome. Cool bananas. Do we have any questions? Is there anyone with questions on that?
Not really questions, but we'll go through because we've had a few chitty chatties.
Chit-chats?
We've got John was over in Poland
on
Sunday, went out for a ride.
Fantastic,
and
John.
He, last Sunday mentioned your channel. And a guy showed me a vid with a pole.
Yes,
riding with you, with little Michael.
Michael is over from Poland, here in Perth at the moment, and he's a part of my private coaching community. And he's here in Perth at the moment training with us. So he's doing so well. Been absolutely awesome. So.
And then we had another person, the Moto Meltdown. The method you are explaining now adds a whole extra level of control and lowers the terror factor exponentially. Excellent. Using your method, I have gone from expecting the rear wheel to do all the work to combining the two.
Excellent.
Add control, reduces fear, boosts confidence.
It really does. When you're riding and you're fearful, because this is something where there's going to always be a large fear factor, we want to work in logical steps. The more that you understand how and why, the more that you can then slowly graduate things and give your brain evidence that it's working. The more evidence you experience that it does work this way, the fear then reduces. So it makes a really, really big difference.
And then Moto Meltdown continued to say that leverage has broken through the plateau that he was, that didn't mean to say his, but that they're at. And thanks for sharing these sessions, Neil.
No worries, man. That's fantastic. And when you do break through those plateaus, like, it's unbelievable how good it feels. And when you go about it correctly, you'll feel how it works for you. And then you end up controlling the bike. A young guy I was coaching today, we were talking about this with clutch control, and I was saying, you decide where the bike goes. You get the work, you become the master of the bike, not being drawn by the bike, and you don't get taken on a ride, you ride the bike.
And then John also mentioned with his ride on Sunday that he was trying the ride and punch I learned here. Oh,
awesome. That's fantastic. I did have quite a number of people who said from the RSG ride video that I did earlier, because RSG and ride technique are very, very close. It is lift by geometry. here, even though our aim is not necessarily generating big lift, if you get it all correct, the outcome will be fantastic lift. And when you get that feeling, it's amazing. The next step within ride technique is connecting them together, because the lift needs to match the obstacle. And then there's different applications of ride technique. There's different situations, such as stationary, bellied out on the bash plate, logs, rocks. There's variations within that. So yeah, we'll then go into that stuff. So.
Yeah. And then through something that we mentioned, Sue said that was her.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what that was in relation to. Sorry, Sue. And then Moto Meltdown said, yes, that's exactly it, Neil. The bike no longer controls me.
That is fantastic to hear. Really, really good. There's been quite a few people who have been off already learning this, and they've made some massive breakthroughs. If that is you, let us know in the comments, because it's fantastic to hear that what we're putting out actually connects for you and makes sense. So that is really the important thing. I've spent quite a few years now coaching online with a wide range of people, and it's amazing how effective it can be when we go about it the right way.
And
so,
it was fear. So Sue, in the same boat with you.
Awesome. No worries, guys. Well, that's pretty much all the comments that are there at the moment.
Yes.
We have ran for
36 plus minutes.
Well, I'm lost here.
Oh,
now.
no, 36. I was a bit dyslexic.
Oh, an hour and 6 minutes.
I was going to say it was like 66 minutes.
Hour and 6 minutes. That's a decent length. So sorry if this one was a bit long and whatnot, but it's very important that you follow those consistent steps to break all that down. I'll put more of this stuff will get chopped up and put into thing. If you're ever looking for the videos, you can find them all on my website, trialsandenduroskills.com. There I'm laying it all out in order, so you can go down. It's all just links to YouTube, but it's in the correct order for just the obstacle stuff. As we do these live videos, there's going to be more videos around psychology, training, bike setup, other things. And the obstacle stuff is going to be segmented there on the website, as well as all the different aspects, training and psychology and different bits and pieces. So anyway, guys, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you continue to ride better, ride different. No worries.